How's it going, everyone? We are here to review some tight ends for week 6 on FanDuel. I got Jason here. He wrote up a little article for you. If you want to check that out, go to dailyfantasycafe.com, check out the site. If you want to watch Boardwalk Empire, then, go watch Boardwalk Empire, which I would highly suggest. What do you think of this week, I guess, is the question here.
This week's a little bit different in terms of kind of going with tight ends. It just seems like guys have kind of come up. You had Hunter Henry, you had guys like Jesse James. It just kind of worked out a little bit well. Now I think this week you want to kind of solidify yourself in the mid-range in terms of cash, and then kind of you can roll the dice on some guys in GPPs.
Well, like Zach Miller is a graduate of once being a really nice value, and now he's okay. But he's certainly priced up there now a little bit. I still like the price, though. You have him as a cash game guy.
Yeah, I do. I mean, still cheap in comparison to guys like Jimmy Graham and Delaney Walker. You are saving some money there. Matchup could be better, but I think with Hoyer under center, I mean, he's been above 10 FanDuel points in each game since Hoyer started. He's going to look his way. Even without touchdowns, I mean, he's still getting targeted quite a bit and still coming through in terms of yardage and receptions. Over the 3 games, he's thrown his way 20 times. I think you're going to continue to see that here. I know other guys, we've seen an Eddie Royal week. We've seen Cameron Meredith week. Jeffrey's been taken out of play. But it really hasn't hindered Miller in what he can do in terms of a floor.
I agree. And I think looking forward, the Kevin White entry was actually subtly really huge for Zach Miller, not in the sense that he would, be cast out, but there's just so many targets to go around now that would have gone to Kevin White. I like Miller quite a bit. Jimmy Graham looking great, coming off the injury. Priced up, you still have him as a cash option. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I mean, I think Jimmy Graham could be probably your most, logical guy to pay up for in terms of, if you're going value elsewhere. I think could be one that could kind of benefit and give you a little bit of an edge for people who don't use him. 17 targets over the last 2 weeks. Hauled in 12 of them. So, obviously he's been pretty efficient. Home matchup against Atlanta, this is a solid one. They've allowed 16.2 FanDuel points per game to tight ends. Still a relatively high total. You and I were kind of talking, there's some possible rain, weather kind of heading their way this weekend. I don't think it's going to hinder Graham too much. I think you more worry about the long threats and things like that for Seattle in terms of the passing game. And in this matchup, I mean, Football Outsiders has Atlanta ranked 22nd. A Graham Wilson stack, I think, is a good way to go this week in GPPs, whether or not you might get a little bit lower ownership if that rain does come their way. But 6,900, he's priced down from Greg Olsen, who I do like this week, but Greg Olsen's super expensive. I mean, 8,100, that's up there. If he was a wide receiver, that'd be your 7th most expensive wide receiver. He's the same price as DeAndre Hopkins. So it's a little bit crazy, but obviously he's still in play. I just don't think cash games you're probably going to be focusing on tight end. I think Olsen's more of a GPP move because it really shifts around lineup construction.
Agreed. For GPPs, I guess lead in with what you're looking at there and whether, like, how strong do you feel on these GPP options?
GPPs here, I think Travis Kelce is going to catch a lot of people off guard because he's in the GPP section. You look at what he's done over the last year or two and you go, okay, he has about 2 big games a year in terms of like being a GPP winner. And the rest, it's always just like 6 for 70, 5 for 80 yards. Like that just is kind of what he does. But then you can get those 2 touchdown games in there. It's happened, once or twice over the last year. And I think this is a matchup where it can happen. Oakland's struggling against tight ends. Reasonable total here. On the road, I think Alex Smith is going to be forced to throw a little bit more. 6,400 is a reasonable pivot off of Jimmy Graham, off of Zach Miller if you kind of want to be a different one. Delaney Walker is up there in price as well, who's another solid option. But Kelce I think he's going to be sneaky. I just think a lot of people are going to use Macklin if they want to get any Chiefs exposure. And they don't really think Kelce is a big upside guy.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Certainly has that upside. We saw it last year in week 1 against Houston. Had a good game a few weeks ago as well. When he gets moving, and there aren't many Raiders, Carl Joseph is a monster back there, but They just seem to miss a lot of assignments, I think, is the problem. Them and the Rams. Like I can't put together when they have down weeks because there's so much talent, like overall on their teams defensively. But yeah, it's a mess. So I like him. Fleener, we're on the same guys. We did different write ups. We don't talk before, but Fleener is very interesting at 5,600.
Yeah, I mean, here we died down to kind of the cheaper guy of the group. 200 less than Miller. Look at that total there. Obviously, Drew Brees, when he's at home, it bumps up the guys around him in terms of his weapons. Still pretty cheap, so obviously you're not really paying up at a tight end spot, but you can get the upside of one of those guys up there. Carolina has just major issues in the secondary. We've even seen it against tight ends as well. They're ranked 29th per Football Outsiders, allowing 13 FanDuel points per game. You look at Fleener, I mean, he's hauling in 7 targets per game, not hauling them in, but seeing 7 targets a game. It's always hit or miss whether he has his hands attached to his body or not on a weekly basis. But, if Breeze is looking his way, I think there's obviously a ton of upside. We've seen that once this year, but the floor is low. I mean, he is a lineup killer, at times. So there is definitely that GPP risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with you there. And I think, uh, Panthers just really aren't as intimidating as a secondary as, we started to believe at the beginning of the year. So certainly adjust there, like Fleener as a tournament guy. Anyone else you're looking at here, or is that pretty much the core?
It's pretty much the core here. Obviously, Greg Olson, I think, can play for GPPs at 8,100. Martellus Bennett, probably going to look like a popular option if people are chasing that week. But overall, I think this is pretty much my group. I really like Graham. Delaney Walker, you can use him in all formats as well. I didn't write him up here, but he's a safe option this week too.
Yeah, no, definitely agree. As always, if you like what we're doing here or like these videos, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you want to check out Jason's article, head to dailyfantasycafe.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you guys in week 7.